Hi, I'm Dave.
And I'm Jennifer, and we are a middle aged couple with an endless fetish for movie popcorn.
And the other thing you need to know about me for this video is that I am a science fiction writer because we went and saw a science fiction movie.
Because we're documenting all the movies that
Oh,
we see
yeah.
in 2025 in this little video
Okay, I
series.
got a little carried away.
And so then we saw a science fiction
We
movie.
saw Mickey-17, the new movie by Bong Joon Ho, and it's gotten a lot of hype, a lot of great positive reviews, and we had mixed feelings.
Yep.
Um, So the good stuff is visually amazing.
Visually
It's a
is
beautiful film.
stunning. It's just like, I wouldn't say beautiful because what it's showing you are things that are not beautiful, but it is so beautifully done. It just seems real. This like preposterously, ridiculously science fictional world is just everything is real, right? Like, of course.
Yes, and that as a science fiction writer, as I mentioned, that is absolutely one of the things I loved about this was the alien world that it takes place on. There's just one. Is beautifully realized. It's gorgeous and austere, and the alien life forms on that planet, which are a major part of the movie, are incredible. There's an incredible design to them. They are very alien, and yet in the end, very relatable. And
Yeah, they're very alien, except they're not. Like,
right,
they're creatures from Earth, big, like that exist in the real world.
sure,
Like, and if you know those things exist, then they're not.
but
Like, they
it's
are
not.
alien to humans because there's lots of things on planet Earth that, I'm sorry, are actual space aliens from space and should be stomped when you
Well,
see them.
that's the
But,
thing.
like,
They are based on animals from Earth, but the animals that they're based on are animals that so few people have everyday contact with that they might as well be aliens.
I guess.
And
I guess we live in a different world.
I just liked the fact that they didn't look like humans with
Yes.
green face paint.
Yes, I agree.
And everything in this movie just looks really good, even when it's like bizarre and you're not really sure what they're trying to say with it. So that gets to the negative criticisms, which is that a lot of it just doesn't make any sense. A lot of it is very farcical, and the thing is, I don't want to
I guess the question before we go forward is this a spoilers thing or not? Because I feel like if we're going to talk about the things that we were actually dissatisfied with in a meaningful way, we're going to end up spoiling it.
Then I guess the spoilers one.
Okay.
Okay, so spoilers for the rest of this video. You have been warned.
Spoilers.
You have been warned. So, the movie is about Mickey-17, who is an expendable on this colony expedition to a planet called Niflheim. And an expendable means that you literally have undergone a process by which every time you die, in 20 hours later, your body is recreated in a body printer, and your memories are downloaded into the new body. And so you effectively are immortal, but this also means that, say, the science team on the ship consider you to be a lab rat that they can experiment on. And the movie is right from the opening scene is very clear that nobody respects the expendable. Mickey's the only expendable in the movie. He's the only expendable on the ship.
For moral reasons, because it's a new technology, like it can't be used on Earth. And so the agreement is it can be used on these colony ships in space, but that it has to be limited.
So the inciting incident of the story is that he is supposed to die in the very early scene, but manages to survive somehow and make his way back to the ship, where he finds that he's already been replaced. So there is now Mickey-17 and Mickey-18 on the ship, and for reasons that felt incredibly contrived and poorly explained, this is illegal. You can't have more than one expendable at a time. Now, your mileage may vary when you see this film. I felt that this was absolutely silly reasoning why you couldn't have two. But it's fine. It's what the movie decided. What the movie filmmakers decided to do with this story.
I mean, I also had no idea until the closing credits that this is based on a book.
It is.
So I don't know how much of that kind of framework is either eliding something that's discussed in a more complicated and nuanced way in the book, or if it's doing what the book did and it's not really about like why there are multiples. It just needs to set up a scenario that there are multiples in order to explore something about identity, because the story, in introducing the idea that he keeps getting replicated, it brings up the questions that you would expect it to bring up about like who Mickey really is, right? And like what's the through line of his personality with these different experiences that the different incarnations have, that are all wildly different from his experiences back on Earth, because he does start on Earth.
So, because that inciting incident about the multiples and why it's illegal to have multiples just didn't work for me, the plot of the movie doesn't really work for me because that's what it's based on. Except then about halfway through, it turns into a completely different plot that has nothing to do with multiples or expendables, and we go on from there. And I'm not gonna spoil the last half of the movie. I don't know why I would. It's a completely different movie.
Yeah, and I guess I felt like it was the things that were preposterous about it, and then therefore hard to kind of continue to follow along, was actually the idea of expending this effort to multiply individual human beings.
Yeah.
And that the kinds of things that they wanted the expendable to like test in science and stuff, like you could test in other ways. Or if you were going to use like a replicable human being for this, it was going to take so many incarnations of it to accomplish the goals that they somehow magically did with like 2 or 3 incarnations of him making these major scientific discoveries, as opposed to there being, a Mickey literally every day, right? This is like a 4-year journey. So whatever 4 times 365 is, like 1,400, to my mind, is where you should have ended up by the time you end up on this planet, right? Like that, it doesn't even make sense that he would be alive for multiple days. Like the kinds of things they were having him do were like ultra disposable shit. Like that's more than 17 of them in it should be like 1 a day, so that just kind of didn't make sense. But I kept going back to Snowpiercer, which is a movie that makes -0 sense. There is literally nothing about that movie that makes a lick of fucking sense, and you just go along with it,
right,
because the world itself is created in all these intricate ways, and the world has more than one dimension, so that like you're introduced to one part of this world, then you're introduced to another part of this world, then you're introduced to a 6th part of this world, and then it kind of moves and connects. And then at the end, you think back on it and you're like, oh my God, like this movie makes no sense and is physically impossible and is probably humanly impossible, because a human society wouldn't work that way and whatever. But during the movie, you don't ever have a chance to stop and think about that.
Right.
In this movie, you do, because there aren't so many different worlds. And in the end, there also aren't so many different Mickeys that you see, right? For any extended period of time. So you really are trying to explore the one world that's created on this colony planet, and the world is both too complete and not complete enough.
Right.
So like that kind of isn't satisfying. I guess the other dimension of, not to go into the plot of it, but I mean, I think this is known in like reviews or whatever, that there's a kind of antagonist character that's basically Trump.
Yeah.
And, that rings a little bit different. Like if this movie had come out in like last July, I might think about this movie a little bit differently. of just having a character like that and a community like that as kind of antagonists also is like, hard for me to engage with. Like it's almost a buffoonish character. And, I've been fairly infuriated at people thinking about Trump as a buffoon for basically the last decade, when he mostly proves himself to be a buffoon and wildly not a buffoon at the exact same time. And
he uses chaos to further his agenda.
Sure.
And so that feels like buffoonery, because it feels like, how could anyone be so, make such ridiculous choices, and then he continues to fail upward.
Right. And this character does this as well. And, it's, I can't laugh at it on March, whatever today is, March 14th, 2025. And as deadly seriously as I want to take it, the movie does take that character seriously, but, it's also fiction, So that was hard in a way that I don't think in some ways is the fault of the movie. You know what I mean? This movie was probably made a year ago and was conceived of more than a year ago. And I think I would have looked at it differently had I seen it a year ago in that dimension.
So, getting away from that, so you mentioned that you kept thinking about Snowpiercer. I kept thinking about Parasite. Parasite, completely different movie.
Yeah.
Much smaller, more, intimate movie, of course. But also an absurdist take on class politics, which is absolutely what this movie is trying to do as well. The difference is that whenever people acted in absurd ways in Parasite, there was always at least an attempt to explain why they were acting that way. And it was a folly of manners. It was, no, of course the rich people are not going to question what's going on because that would be impolite. Or, the poor people are certainly going to take advantage of this situation because they have nothing. All that made sense in the world of the movie, much like Snowpiercer. Whereas in this movie, people are constantly making decisions that don't make any sense for them, for their characters, for the absurd situation. They're acting contrary to their own interests constantly, and contrary to their established characters. The female lead in the movie, who I know you had trouble with.
Yep. Naomi Aki, an actress I very much like.
Yes, and is very good in this role, but is given 3 different characters that she has to inhabit. They're not clones.
Yeah.
These are not, it's not that she's supposed to be the same person the whole time, but she goes through, first off, this woman who is just a manic pixie dream girl for Robert Pattinson. That's one thing about this movie, is that we just take it as read that every woman on this spaceship is in love with Robert Pattinson for no reason. He is not attractive in this movie. He's not attempting to attract them in any way. They just fall in love with him. Okay, fine. He's Robert Pattinson. Sure.
Sorry, that one's kind of lost on me, except for the haircut.
Whatever. So, but that's it. And then, so that's her first role. Her second role, and she's a security guard suddenly out of nowhere, who is also using drugs. And no explanation how she got to that point. And then the movie takes this massive shift, and she becomes obsessed with preserving a baby alien. We don't know. There's been no mention whatsoever up to this point that she has any maternal feelings, that she wants a baby, that she has feelings for the aliens, or like even respects them in any way. But there's a baby alien, gets put in peril, and she's suddenly super mama to a thing that looks like a maggot.
I would say that actually what encapsulates all of this is that he's managed to create a movie with a female magical Negro.
Okay.
Who exists to solve all of the problems that Robert Pattinson finds himself in.
Right.
And if the problem looks this way, then the character looks this way in a way that helps solve the problem. And if, he looks this way, or the problem looks this way, then she exists in this way. And it's you know, it's a trope that I just wouldn't expect from a South Korean director, but that is the power of the cultural stories that we have told
Yeah.
over the generations, that it seeps into everything. Now, I have absolutely no idea about this book, so maybe that is coming from the book, but you know, like, it's coming from somewhere.
Yeah.
And it's pretty stunning. Like, okay, great, fine.
So I could quibble with a lot of things about this movie as a science fiction writer. I think that a lot of that probably comes from the book. Maybe it's different in the book and is all explained. Specifically, I will just say that this planet has it's a very cold planet. It's like an ice planet.
It's basically Hoth.
Hoth, except it only has one species of alien on it. There is no ecosystem as far as we can tell. There's no explanation what this one alien eats or how it fits into any kind of larger cycle of ecology. Okay, it's not particularly important to the movie. The movie's not trying to tell. This is not Dune with the sandworms. We're not going to give you the whole life cycle of these things. Okay, that's fine. But that's the thing about this movie is I just feel like there's a ton of stuff that happens in this movie that is never explained. That the movie has no interest in explaining it. It just wants to move you from one set piece to another of absurdism and people being put in terrible situations. Does it make important points about class and politics?
No.
Not particularly. I mean, Parasite was so brilliant with that, where
Yeah.
it puts you in this space of, you know, getting every character in Parasite, I think, is relatable and sympathetic, and that's the beauty of it, is that these characters who are in, you know, violent opposition to each other are still real human beings. And in this movie, these are just stand-ins for ideas and notions, and even then the characters are not consistent in themselves.
Yep.
So it was very difficult to see this as a meaningful political statement or as a good story. And I think you had to do either one or the other of those, and it just failed on both. The ending specifically, I found completely ludicrous.
Mm-hmm.
It made no sense whatsoever. It's just
Yep.
a complete deus ex machina.
Yep.
I don't know. Anything else?
And it was a little too long.
It was too long. It's a big story, and it's going to have lots of moving parts. Yeah, it's going to be long, but it felt long.
Yeah, because it didn't feel like a big story. Like, it had all this stuff going on, but the story wasn't very big. And that's what, I think, in a way, we were partially dissatisfied by.
Mm-hmm.
Like, the story could actually have been more complex, or had more dimensions, or more elements, or more main characters. You know, like, yeah.
Anyway, so, you know, your mileage may vary, and a lot of people are liking this.
Yep.
It's a very popular movie right now. The reviews are fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
And I can see why. I mean, you know, again, it does look great. Robert Pattinson does a fine job. He has two main characters in the movie, Mickey-17 and Mickey-18, and you always know which one is active in a given scene. They're often on the screen together, and you can tell them apart, even when they're, you know, standing next to each other, wearing identical outfits.
Yeah, identical outfits, identical haircuts. Like, yeah, it is like, that is an acting accomplishment. Like, he really distinguishes these two
Mm-hmm.
people by their faces.
Yeah.
Better than the dude. You remember in Orphan Black, where they had the season where they tried to bring a dude to be a clone,
orphan, yeah.
and they struggled because they couldn't differentiate, like, hairstyle and stuff, and the actor was so terrible that you couldn't tell the difference between the different dudes. They were all the same guy. I thought he was terrible.
I think he got better as the season went on.
Sure, but I mean, it was terrible.
It was pretty bad.
Yeah, so that comes to mind, and Robert Pattinson did a lot better.
Did
now,
a lot better.
Mind you, he only really had to do two, which that guy had to do more, but he couldn't differentiate two.
I gotta say, I mean, Robert Pattinson and Kristen Stewart are interesting because they started out as these teenage heartthrobs in Twilight, which is a terrible movie. I'm sorry, I did not enjoy that one.
I didn't see it, but it looks stupid.
and nobody expected them to do anything other than endless variations of that. The two of them both went on to have very interesting careers.
Yeah.
And I think, they're both very good actors. I loved Robert Pattinson in The Lighthouse
Yeah, I didn't
a
see
couple of
that.
years ago. So I think he is a great actor, and I wish that he'd been given a better movie to be in.
Yep.
I don't know. There, like we said, this is a mixed bag. There were things I really did like about this movie. I liked it as a science fiction movie for the most part. Didn't quite hold together, but that's okay. What I want from a science fiction movie that's delivered, which is interesting planets and spaceships and the horror of living on a spaceship for 4 years and you know, very little food good to go around and all those things. Um, it delivered on that front as a science fiction movie. But this was supposed to be so much more than that.
Yeah.
And I just don't think the parts don't add up to a whole.
Yeah.
Much less being greater than the sum of, the whole being the greater than the sum of its parts.
Yep.
So, okay. That's what I have to say about Mickey-17. Do you have anything to add?
Nope.
All right. Well, we will see you next time.
Alrighty. Bye.
Bye.